A man kneels in the choking white dust of a Syrian trade route. The midday sun beats against his back, but he cannot see it. But if you look closer at the Greek grammar in the book of Acts, at the geopolitical reality of the Roman Empire, they carry a blessing. The cursed corners of the globe are supposed to feel it. This was always the blueprint, but human history is bloody, and trauma builds heavy walls. By the 1st century, the lighthouse has become a bunker. The Roman Empire breathes down their necks. The eagles of the legions stand in the holy city. The Gentiles are not the target of their light. They are the source of their oppression. So they build fences around the Torah. They separate the clean from the unclean. And then the veil is lifted for a Pharisee on the road to Damascus. When Saul sees the resurrected Christ, he does not just see a king. He sees a cosmic trigger. The resurrection means the final days have begun. The final days mean the ancient prophecies are now active. The prophecies mean the Gentiles are finally invited to the table. He travels to Antioch. He boards ships smelling of wet timber and sea salt. He stands in the shadow of towering marble statues in Athens. He speaks until his voice goes raw. He writes letters by the dim, flickering light of oil lamps in Roman prisons. They drag him outside city gates. They pick up heavy stones and hurl them at his chest. They leave him bleeding in the dirt, assuming he is dead. And at the letters this man would eventually write, you start to see a reality that the conversion myth completely erases. He wakes up, wipes the blood from his mouth, and walks right back into the city. Why? For a new religion? No. He is not starting a new faith. He is activating the oldest mandate of the one he already has. His mission to the Gentiles is not a rebellion against the Torah. It is the absolute, terrifying fulfillment of it. He is dragging the nations into the tent of Abraham because the Messiah has finally opened the door. This changes how you read every single argument he ever has with the Jewish leaders. They do not hate him because he left the faith. They hate him because of who he is bringing inside. But to prove this, he had to do something unprecedented. He had to weave a theological thread so tight that it connected a pagan idol worshiper in Corinth straight back to the dust of Genesis. But the detail that makes this theological thread so brilliant is where he anchors it. When Paul writes his masterpiece to the Romans, a group of believers sitting in the violent, pagan belly of the empire, he does not introduce a brand new theology of salvation. He introduces them to an olive tree. He asks them to picture ancient, gnarled roots pulling water from the deep earth. The event on the Damascus road was not a conversion. It was a calling. Jesus did not give him a new name. He describes the heavy, cultivated branches of Israel. And then he describes a knife. You can almost see the sharp blades slicing the bark, the sap bleeding out. The wild branch, bound tightly to the ancient wood. He tells these non-Jewish believers that they are wild olive shoots. They have been cut from an untamed tree and grafted violently into the cultivated trunk of Israel, feeding on the exact same sap, anchored to the exact same root. He does not tell them that God has chopped down the tree of Israel to plant a Christian forest. They are not a replacement. They are an expansion. To prove this, he bypasses the Exodus entirely. He walks his readers straight past the thundering, smoke-covered peaks of Mount Sinai and goes all the way back to a quiet, starry night in Genesis chapter 15. He points out a glaring chronological fact that many first-century scholars completely glossed over. God promises Abraham a family as numerous as the stars. Abraham believes the promise, and God credits it to him as righteousness. This happens years before the surgical knife of circumcision is ever commanded in chapter 17. It happens centuries before Moses brings a single commandment down the mountain. Abraham is declared righteous before God, while he is still, technically speaking, an uncircumcised Gentile. For Paul, this is the silver bullet. This is the ultimate, undeniable proof that a pagan in Corinth or a soldier in Rome, he did not ask him to abandon his heritage. This distinction is not just academic. It is not a theological technicality, can be adopted into the family of God through faith, without ever taking on the physical boundary markers of the Jewish law. He is not teaching that the Torah failed. He is teaching that the Torah itself predicted this exact inclusion. The inclusion of the Gentiles is not the destruction of Israel's story. It is the climax of it. When we miss this profound continuity, we misread almost everything he ever wrote. When Paul argues passionately against the works of the law in his letters, he is not saying that the Old Testament is a broken, legalistic religion that Jesus had to come and fix. He is not setting up a battle between Jewish wrath and Christian grace. He is arguing against a specific, localized boundary marker. He is furious that certain teachers are trying to force Greek converts to become culturally Jewish, to be circumcised and eat kosher, before they can be considered true members of God's family. He is fighting to keep the door open for the nations, exactly as the ancient prophets promised. He is guarding the veil that was lifted in the Syrian dust. But history has a way of flattening beautiful things, and what we have done to his letters in the 2,000 years since would probably break his heart. If you believe Saul converted away from Judaism, you will read every letter he ever wrote as a textbook on how Christianity replaced an old, obsolete religion. Look at the Bible sitting on your desk. Feel the thin, rustling pages. Look at the neon highlighter bleeding through the paper in Romans and Galatians. We have been taught to read those pages backward. We read Paul through the lens of European stained glass. We read him through the heavy wooden doors of 16th century reformers. We read him as a man who hated rules, left his rigid religion behind, and invented a brand new system of grace. We read the word law in his letters and assume he means a broken system of earning salvation. We read grace and assume he is introducing a concept the Old Testament had never seen. But he did not invent grace. He inherited it. Grace is not a New Testament invention. It was woven into the fabric of the Exodus. It was beating in the chest of King David. It was the absolute center of the Hebrew scriptures Paul memorized as a boy in Tarsus. When we treat the Damascus Road as a conversion from a bad, legalistic religion to a good, free one, we do something incredibly dangerous. We sever the root of the tree. We turn the Old Testament into a dusty museum of failure. We look at the law as a curse. We look at the prophets as obsolete. We look at the ancient covenants as a discarded first draft. You will read his letters as the triumph of a new system over a dead one. The question you have to ask is not of God's redemptive plan. This is not just a harmless theological mistake. It is a historical tragedy. The separation of Paul from his Jewish roots has left blood on the cobblestones of Europe. It has fueled centuries of hostility. It has allowed men to stand in stone pulpits and preach the love of Christ while violently demonizing the very people who gave us his name. All because we misunderstood a moment in the blinding dust. All because we thought a Roman passport name was a spiritual rebirth. Paul was not a Christian replacing a Jew. He was a Jew inviting the world into the family. We have to unlearn the clean, severed timelines we were handed in Sunday school. We have to strip away the centuries of Roman and European baggage. We have to read him as he actually was. A man with Torah on his breath. A man with the prophets in his bones. A man who never once believed God had changed his mind about Israel. But if he never left, if he was anchored to his ancient heritage until his dying breath, how did he actually view his own life? How did he describe his own identity when the Roman chains were finally wrapped around his wrists in a dark, damp cell? Why did Saul leave Judaism? It is this. What did he see in that blinding flash that proved his Judaism had just achieved its cosmic goal? Water drips from the ceiling of a Roman holding cell, pooling on the cold, uneven stone floor. An old man sits in the dim, flickering light of a single torch, his wrists weighed down by heavy iron chains that bite into his skin with every small movement. He is nearing the end of his life, waiting to stand trial before the most powerful man in the world. And the Roman guards stationed outside his door assume they are guarding the leader of a dangerous new sect. But listen to the words that actually come out of his mouth when he defends his life. When he stands before the Jewish council in Jerusalem, in Acts chapter 23. He does not introduce himself as a former Jew who has found a better path. He looks the high priest in the eye, raises his voice over the chaotic crowd, and shouts, "I'm a Pharisee, a son of Pharisees." Notice the grammar he uses in that dangerous moment. He does not say he used to be a Pharisee. He says he is one. Even years later, when he finally reaches Rome in chains, he calls for the local Jewish leaders to come to his damp cell. He wants to explain exactly why he has been arrested, and his defense is stunningly consistent with everything he has ever preached. He tells them, clearly and directly, that he has done absolutely nothing. To feel the weight of what actually happened, you have to start with the name itself, Saul to Paul. It is the classic Sunday school transition against their people or the ancient customs of their fathers. He is not a man who has abandoned his heritage. He is a man who believes he has found its king. The heavy iron rubbing his wrists raw is not the punishment for walking away from Judaism. It is the cost of aggressively expanding its borders to include the rest of the bleeding world. He never changed his religion. He simply recognized that the God of Abraham had kept his most impossible promise, pulling the nations of the earth into the tent, just as the ancient prophets had predicted. He will die in Rome, far from the burning incense of the temple, far from the blinding Syrian dirt where the veil was first lifted. But to understand the true magnitude of what happened on that road, you have to look back at the massive, unbroken thread of what God was actually doing. A boy born in Tarsus carried a Roman passport in his pocket, and he used it to unlock the pagan world. A Pharisee fell blind in the Syrian dirt and realized his ancient hope had arrived ahead of schedule. The heavy veil of the Torah was violently pulled back, and the crucified Galilean was revealed as the climax of the scroll. God changes Abram to Abraham. He changes Jacob to Israel. He changes Simon to Peter. So, naturally, Jesus must have changed Saul to Paul. The ancient prophecies of Isaiah were finally activated, and a lighthouse was turned on for the nations. A wild, the uncultivated branch was grafted into an ancient root, and the family of Abraham expanded beyond the borders of circumcision. An old man sat chained to a Roman soldier in a damp cell and declared with his dying breath that he had never abandoned the faith of his fathers. The boundaries of a single nation were shattered, and the entire bleeding world was dragged into the tent of God. One continuous thread, one unbroken story. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the passport itself. Saulus Okai Paulus. Saul, who is also called Paul. God did not require him to burn down his history. He did not erase his upbringing, his tribal lineage, or the rough parchment scrolls he had memorized as a young man. He took the exact raw materials of a Pharisee's intense, zealous life, added a blinding revelation of the risen Christ, and turned a violent persecutor into the greatest bridge builder the world has ever seen. If you are in a season where you feel like you have to completely erase who you used to be for God to use you, where you assume we treat it like a spiritual witness protection program, the old man is dead. Here is the new one. But read the book of Acts. Your past is just a museum of failure. Or that your background disqualifies you. The Damascus Road is a place to sit. You do not have to change your name. You do not have to discard the years of your life that feel misaligned or broken. God does not usually work by replacing us. He works by revealing himself in the middle of our story, taking the very things that shaped us and aiming them in an entirely new direction. And may the God who wastes absolutely nothing in your timeline, not your upbringing, not your wandering, not your sudden blinding stops in the dirt, lift the veil on your own life and show you how it has all been pointing to him. He is completely, terrifyingly blind. The men traveling with him are frozen, gripping the reins of their animals. Look for the moment the name is actually changed. You will not find it. Jesus does not rename him in the dust of the road. Ananias does not rename him when the scales fall from his eyes. For years after this blinding encounter, as he travels and preaches and suffers, the text still calls him Saul. The shift to the name Paul happens much later. It happens quietly, casually, on an island hundreds of miles away. And it happens for a reason that has absolutely nothing to do with a spiritual rebirth. It has everything to do with a political reality he possessed from the very first day he drew breath. In the first century Mediterranean, a name is a passport. It dictates where you can walk. It dictates who will listen to you. It dictates whether your body can be legally broken by a wooden rod. We look at the ancient world and assume it was simple. We imagine a sharp line between Jewish and Gentile spaces. But the reality was messy, cosmopolitan, and deeply layered. Many Jews living outside of Judea carried two names. They carried a Hebrew name for the synagogue. They carried a Greek or Roman name for the marketplace. You see it throughout the biblical text. John is also called Mark. Simeon is also called Niger. Even Jesus' own disciples carried Greek names, their ears ringing from a voice that just shattered the quiet of the desert. Just moments ago, this man was holding leather-bound letters of extradition, like Philip and Andrew, alongside their Galilean identities. This is the world of the man from Tarsus. He was born a Hebrew of Hebrews. He was from the tribe of Benjamin. His parents named him Shaul. Saul. He was named after the very first king of Israel, the most famous Benjamite in history. You can feel the rough parchment of the Torah scrolls he memorized. You can smell the burning incense of his strict Pharisaic upbringing. But he was also born in Tarsus. Tarsus was a major Roman trade hub. It was a city of marble columns, bustling ports, and heavy taxation. And somehow, his Jewish family possessed Roman citizenship. It was a rare, blood-bought privilege in the ancient world. A Roman citizen required a Roman name, a tria nomina. So, the boy received a second name, Paulus. He did not lose Shaul. He gained Paulus. One for the Sabbath table, one for the governor's court, one for the rabbis, one for the centurions. He lived in two worlds. He breathed two atmospheres. For 13 chapters in the book of Acts, he operates primarily in Jewish spaces. He debates in synagogues. He travels to Jerusalem. He guards the coats of the men throwing heavy stones at Stephen. In all of these Jewish contexts, the text calls him by his Jewish name, Saul. Then everything shifts. He travels to the island of Cyprus. He was authorized to drag men and women out of their homes in Damascus in chains. He was the apex predator of first-century Jerusalem. He steps into the court of a Roman proconsul named Sergius Paulus. He is suddenly standing in the epicenter of Gentile Roman power. Look at how the author of Acts records this moment in chapter 13. Verse 9. Luke writes a single, devastatingly simple phrase. Then Saul, who was also called Paul, the Greek text is Saulos hokai Paulos. Jesus did not strip away his Hebrew identity. The church did not issue him a Christian title. He simply reached into his pocket and pulled out his Roman passport to speak to a Roman official. The name Paul is not a spiritual rebirth. It is a tactical deployment. He needed the Roman name to reach the Roman world, but he never stopped being Shaul the Pharisee. He never stopped being the Jewish scholar who knew the law intimately. If the name was not a rejection of his past, then a massive theological crack begins to form. We have built entire doctrines on the idea that he abandoned his religion for a new one. But if the name was just a tool, what actually happened in the blinding dust of Syria? What did he see that knocked him off his feet? Let us go back to the Syrian dirt. The men traveling with him stand completely speechless, hunting down the followers of a crucified rabbi. Now, he is being led by the hand like a child. We know this story. The text tells us they hear the sound, but they cannot see the speaker. Saul is on his hands and knees. The heat of the afternoon sun is nothing compared to the brilliance that has just struck him blind. A voice cuts through the ringing in his ears. And the voice does not speak in Greek. It does not speak in Latin. According to Saul's own memory of this moment, recorded in Acts 26, the voice speaks to him in the language of his ancestors. It speaks in the Hebrew dialect. Shaul, Shaul, why are you persecuting me? He asks who is speaking. The answer shatters the universe as he knows it. I am Jesus. In a fraction of a second, while the dust settles on his robes, every scroll he has ever memorized is violently rearranged. He is a Pharisee. Pharisees believe in the resurrection of the dead, but they believe it happens at the very end of time, It is supposed to be a cosmic, global event where all the righteous are raised together when God finally judges the earth. He expects the Messiah to come in military power. He expects the Messiah to crush the Roman occupation. He expects the Messiah to vindicate the nation of Israel with fire and iron. But here, standing in a blinding light, it is the most famous plot twist in human history. Most people assume they know exactly what happened on this dirt road. Is a man who was publicly executed as a state criminal. A man whose lungs gave out on a Roman cross. A man who died under the explicit curse of the Torah. And he is alive. He has been resurrected. Not at the end of history, but right in the middle of it. The Damascus Road was not a rejection of his Jewish hope. It was the terrifying realization that his Jewish hope had just arrived ahead of schedule. He did not realize he was in the wrong religion. He realized he was in the wrong age. The world to come had bled into the present, and it was wearing the face of a crucified Galilean. He had been zealous for God. He had been defending the borders of the Torah with extreme prejudice. He had been protecting the purity of Israel from a heretical sect, doing exactly what the ancient heroes of his faith had done. His zeal was not the problem. His timeline was, he was fighting a war that had already ended. This is why. When you read his letters, he never describes this moment as a conversion away from Judaism. He never talks about leaving the faith of his fathers to start something new. Years later, when he sits down to write a letter, they think they understand the mechanics of this moment. They assume the Pharisee named Saul met Jesus to the churches in Galatia. He has to explain what actually happened to him on that road. He has to explain how he went from hunting followers of the way to planting churches among the Gentiles. And he uses a specific, heavily loaded Greek word. It is a word that reframes the entire trajectory of the New Testament. Turn to Galatians chapter 1, verses 11 and 12. Paul is writing to a group of confused non-Jewish believers who are being told they need to adopt strict Jewish customs to follow Jesus. He is defending his authority, defending his message, and explaining exactly where his gospel came from. He writes, "I did not receive it from any man, nor was I taught it, but I received it through a revelation of Jesus Christ." The word translated as revelation in our English Bibles is the Greek apocalypsis. We hear that word today, and our minds instantly go to the end of the world. We think of apocalyptic movies. We picture fire falling from the sky, oceans boiling, and the destruction of the planet. But in the first century, the root of apocalypsis had nothing to do with destruction. It meant an uncovering. It meant the physical pulling back of a heavy veil. It is the image of lifting a thick curtain, realized everything he had been taught was a lie, threw away his Judaism, and changed his name to Paul to mark the birth of a brand new religion. Off a stage, so you can finally see the reality that was standing in the dark the whole time. If seeing the original language strip away centuries of religious assumptions is stirring up questions you've never considered, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the heavy curtain is lifted in the Syrian dust. When Paul uses apocalypsis to describe his encounter on the Damascus Road, he is making a massive, paradigm-shifting claim about what actually happened to him. God did not hand him a brand new religion to replace an obsolete one. God pulled back the veil on the religion he already held. The ink on the Torah scrolls he had memorized did not change. The light hitting the parchment did. He suddenly saw that everything he had studied, the temple, the sacrifices, the covenants, the Exodus, was a giant arrow pointing directly at the crucified and risen Galilean. We see this exact same word used in Luke chapter 2. When an old man named Simeon holds the infant Jesus in the temple, he calls the baby a light for apocalypsis to the Gentiles, an unveiling, a disclosure of a mystery that had been hidden for generations. It is a clean, dramatic narrative. It fits perfectly onto a timeline of leaving an old, broken life behind for a new, spiritual one. Paul did not look at his Jewish heritage and declare it a failure. He looked at it and realized it had finally succeeded. The Damascus Road was not a conversion. It was a clarification. He did not abandon the story of Israel. He simply met the one who brought that story to its promised. Shocking climax. But this raises a massive geopolitical problem. If his encounter was just an unveiling of his Jewish faith, why did he spend the rest of his life bleeding and suffering? To bring this message to the Gentiles? Because the veil did not just reveal who Jesus was. It revealed what Israel was supposed to be doing all along. A prophet presses a reed pen to rough papyrus. The ink dries in the Judean sun. It records a wild, impossible promise, centuries before a Roman road is ever paved. The prophet Isaiah writes down the job description for the nation of Israel. He writes that it is too small a thing for God to merely restore the tribes of Jacob. He writes that God will make them a light to the Gentiles. Israel was not chosen to sit in a fortress. They were chosen to be a lighthouse. They build a temple. The nations are supposed to stream to it. They receive a law. The nations are supposed to marvel at it.